In today's episode of Mind Mirror, we will talk about subtle ways to understand others quickly: tone, body language, phrasing. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're trying to read someone's mind? You're standing across from them, chatting away, but your intuition is screaming that there's more to what they're saying than meets the eye. That's because often the most important information we receive about others comes not through words, but through subtle cues: our tone of voice, body language, and even the way we phrase our sentences. You see, when it comes to communicating with others, we tend to focus on the obvious, what they're saying directly. But if you want to truly understand someone, you need to look beyond that surface level. That's where these subtle cues come in: tiny details that can reveal a person's true intentions, emotions, and even values. Take tone of voice, for example. When we speak to someone, our words are just the beginning. The way we say them with enthusiasm, boredom, or even sarcasm can completely change the meaning behind them. For instance, if someone says "I'm fine," but their tone is flat and unenthusiastic, you know they're not telling the truth. On the other hand, if they say it with a big smile on their face and inflection in their voice, you know they mean it. Body language is another key player in this game of subtlety. When we look at someone's posture, facial expressions, and even the way they move around, we can gain a wealth of information about how they're feeling. A person who crosses their arms might be feeling defensive or closed off, while someone who leans forward might be showing genuine interest. And have you ever noticed how our body language can actually affect how others perceive us? If we stand with our shoulders back and head held high, we exude confidence, even if we're hiding it from the inside out. Phrasing is another area where these subtle cues come into play. When we speak, the way we construct our sentences can reveal a lot about what's really going on beneath the surface. For instance, if someone says, "I'm just trying to make ends meet," but they use phrases like "it's not my fault" or "they're taking advantage of me," you might infer that there's more to it than just financial struggles. This is especially true in situations where people are speaking in a formal or professional setting, and their words take on a tone that's often carefully crafted. Now I know what you're thinking: how can these subtle cues be so telling? The answer lies in the fact that they're not just random observations, they're actually rooted in our own biology and psychology. For instance, research has shown that our brain processes facial expressions faster than verbal information. This means that when we look at someone's face, our mind is automatically trying to make sense of their emotions, even before they consciously tell us how they feel. And then there's the power of mirroring. When we see someone doing something, like waving or pointing, and we do it back to them, it can actually create a sense of connection and rapport between us. This is because our brain is wired to respond positively to patterns, even if those patterns are just unconscious movements that we're trying to hide. So how can you start using these subtle cues to better understand others? First, pay attention to the way people speak. Notice not just what they say, but also how they say it, with enthusiasm or boredom, for example. Take note of their body language and facial expressions. Do they seem open or closed off? And listen for phrasing that reveals more than meets the eye. But here's the thing: these subtle cues aren't always easy to spot. Sometimes we have to pay close attention over a long period of time to really get a sense of someone's underlying feelings and motivations. Other times, they can be downright misleading, especially if our own biases or assumptions are clouding our judgment. So what's the key to unlocking these subtle cues? It starts with being aware of them in the first place. Take some time to reflect on your own body language and tone of voice. Do you often come across as confident and assertive, or more reserved and uncertain? And then start observing others. Notice how they speak, move around, and react to different situations. The most important thing is to be patient and non-judgmental. When we're trying to understand someone else's subtle cues, it's easy to jump to conclusions or make assumptions based on limited information. But that's not how true understanding works. It requires us to slow down, listen carefully, and really see what's going on beneath the surface. And finally, remember that these subtle cues aren't just about reading others. They're also about being understood by them in return. When we take the time to observe someone else's tone of voice, body language, and phrasing, we show them that we value their feelings and perspectives, even if we don't always agree with them. So next time you find yourself trying to read someone's mind, remember that there's more to it than just words. Take a closer look at the subtle cues that are really telling you something about who they are and what they're feeling, and see how much more you can understand and connect with others when you start paying attention to these often overlooked details. Stay tuned for the next episode of Mind Mirror, a reflection of thoughts you never say out loud.